The station called Apex 7 floated in the darkness of space like a massive wheel of light. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its arms. Inside its central chamber, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an important meeting. Today they would decide if humans could join their council. Hana Choi stood in the waiting area with her team. She wore her military uniform, the blue fabric pressed and clean. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed no emotion, but inside her chest, her heart beat faster than normal. This was the moment Earth had been waiting for. Next to her stood Jiho Park, the official speaker for humanity. He was older, with gray touching his temples. He had spent 20 years preparing for this day. On her other side was Yuna Lim, the chief scientist. Yuna held a datapad filled with information about human achievements. Behind them waited other members of the human delegation, all hoping for good news. The doors opened. A voice called them forward. Hannah led her team into the council chamber. The room was enormous. It rose up like a cathedral, with seats arranged in circles that went up and up toward the ceiling. Hundreds of aliens sat in those seats. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Hana had to stop herself from staring. There were beings made of crystal that hummed with light. There were creatures that floated in tanks of green liquid. There were massive things covered in shells, and tiny things that glowed like fireflies. At the center of the chamber stood a platform. The Arbiter waited there. The Arbiter was a being of pure crystal, tall as 3 humans, with a voice that sounded like music and thunder mixed together. It spoke in a language that the translation device in Hana's ear turned into Korean. "The human delegation may approach," the Arbiter said. Hana walked forward. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The eyes of hundreds of species followed her movement. She had fought in wars. She had commanded soldiers in battle. She had survived things that would have broken most people. But this felt different. This felt like the entire future of her species rested on what happened in the next hour. The Arbiter explained the process. Each member species could speak about humanity. They could ask questions. They could share their observations. Then they would vote on whether humans could join the galactic community as equals. The first to speak was a representative from the Vexori, a species that looked like giant serpents covered in beautiful scales. The Vexori representative praised human art and music. They talked about human creativity and curiosity. Hannah felt a small hope grow in her chest. Then the Moldari spoke. They lived in water and had to use special suits to breathe the station's air. They expressed worry about human history. So many wars. So much violence. Could humans be trusted to keep peace among the stars? Jiho stepped forward to answer. He spoke about how humanity had learned from its mistakes. He talked about the century of peace on Earth. He showed data about human cooperation and kindness. His words were careful and measured. Several more species spoke. Some positive, some concerned, some neutral. The debate went on for an hour. Hannah stood perfectly still, her hands behind her back, listening to aliens discuss her species, like scientists examining a new type of insect. Then Volmoth stood up. Volmoth was Kruinix, and the Kruinix were warriors. They stood over 2 meters tall on 4 powerful legs. Their upper body had 4 arms, each ending in claws that could tear through metal. Their head was protected by natural bone armor, and their 6 eyes could see in almost complete darkness. They had conquered 3 sectors of space through military strength. Velmoth's voice was deep and harsh. The translation device struggled to keep up with his aggressive tone. "I have studied the humans," Velmoth said. "I have examined their biology. I have reviewed their capabilities. And I have reached a conclusion." The chamber went quiet. Everyone waited. "Humans are weak," Velmoth declared. "They are among the weakest species I have ever encountered. Look at them. They have no natural armor. Their skin tears easily. They have no claws, no fangs, no venom. They cannot see in the dark. They cannot hear high frequencies. They cannot even smell danger approaching. Their young take years to mature, and even then they remain fragile. Hana felt her jaw tighten. Next to her, Jiho's hands curled into fists. But she remained still. Humans live barely 100 of their years, Velmoth continued. Many species here live 10 times that long. They are slow to reproduce. They require specific conditions to survive. Too hot, they die. Too cold, they die. Wrong air, they die. They are the most dependent on technology of any species I have studied. Velmoth turned his 6 eyes directly on the human delegation. They have survived on their planet only because they faced no real competition. Their world had no intelligent predators, no rival species. They are evolutionary accidents who stumbled into intelligence and now believe they deserve a place among true civilizations. The chamber filled with murmurs. Some species made sounds of agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. The Vexuri representative tried to interrupt, but Velmoth raised one massive claw for silence. I propose, Velmoth said, that humans should be classified as a servant species. They have useful hands for building things. They can follow instructions. Let them serve the greater species. Let them work in our factories and maintain our machines. But they should never be considered equals. They are simply too weak to deserve that honor. The silence that followed was heavy and terrible. Hana could feel the eyes of the galaxy on her team. She could sense the pity from some species, the agreement from others. This was worse than she had imagined. Not just rejection, but humiliation. The Arbiter spoke. Does the human delegation wish to respond to these observations? For a moment, no one moved. Then Hana stepped forward. She walked slowly toward the center platform. Her boots echoed in the silent chamber. She walked past Velmoth, looking up at the massive warrior. She walked to the very center, where everyone could see her clearly. She stood there, one human woman, small and fragile compared to the beings surrounding her. She looked up at the Arbiter. She looked around at the hundreds of species watching her. Then she looked directly at Velmoth. Give me 1 standard week, Hana said. Her voice was calm and clear. The chamber erupted in confusion. The Arbiter's crystal body flashed with light. Please clarify your statement. 1 week, Hana repeated. Give me 7 days. If I can prove that humans are capable, that we are not weak, then this council must reconsider. If I fail, then humanity will accept whatever decision you make. We will not argue. We will not complain. We will accept your judgment. Velmoth made a sound that the translator called laughter. It sounded like metal being crushed. The human offers a challenge? This is amusing. Very well, small creature. I accept, but I choose the test. Is this agreed? Hana nodded once. Agreed. The Arbiter looked concerned. Warcast Velmoth, what test do you propose? Velmoth's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. Kethra 9, the training world of the Kruonix. The human will be placed there with basic supplies. She must survive for 7 days and reach the extraction point 500 kilometers away. The same trial every Kruonix warrior must pass. If she succeeds, I will withdraw my objections. If she fails, he gestured with one claw, leaving the sentence unfinished. The chamber exploded with voices. Several species shouted protests. The Vexuri representative declared it murder. Others argued that no human could possibly survive such a test. The survival rate for Kruonix warriors themselves was less than half, and they were 3 times stronger and more durable than humans. But Hana raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her voice cut through the noise. I accept. The human quarters on Apex 7 felt too small and too quiet after the chaos of the council chamber. Hana sat at the table while her team stood around her, all talking at once. "You can't do this," Minho Song said. He was her tactical officer, a man who had fought beside her in 3 campaigns. His voice was loud and desperate. "The survival rate is 40% for Kruinix warriors. For a human? The computer estimates less than 5% chance of success." Taeyang Kim, the ship's doctor, pulled up holographic displays showing the death world. "Look at this. The temperature ranges from 45 degrees during the day to below freezing at night. The gravity is 1.3 times Earth normal. The predators there have killed hundreds of trained Kruinix soldiers. This isn't a test, Hana. This is an execution." Yuna stood with her arms crossed, her normally calm face showing anger. "Velmoth planned this. He knew you would accept. He's not trying to test us. He's trying to make an example of us. When you die on that world, every species in the council will remember that humans are weak." Jiho paced back and forth, his hands behind his back. "There must be another way. We can challenge the validity of the test. We can argue that it's not a fair comparison. We can... No." Hana's voice was quiet but firm. Everyone stopped talking. "We can't back out now. If we challenge the test, we look weak and scared. If we refuse, we look like cowards. The only way forward is through certain death?" Minho shouted. "Hana, please. Think about this." "I have thought about it." Hana stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars filled the darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, the planet where humans had learned to survive against impossible odds for millions of years. "I've been thinking about it since Velmoth started talking. He sees humans and he sees weakness. Soft skin, no claws, no armor. He thinks those things matter most." She turned back to face her team. "But he's wrong. The Kruinix evolved as predators. They were born with weapons. They never had to invent them. They don't understand what it means to be human." "What does it mean?" Yuna asked quietly. "It means we adapt," Hana said. "It means we don't need to be born with claws because we make them. We don't need thick skin because we make clothes and armor. We don't need to be the strongest because we're the smartest. Velmoth thinks he's testing my strength. But strength isn't what makes humans dangerous." The room fell silent. Then Taeyang spoke. "What do you need from us?" Over the next 3 days, Hana prepared. She spent hours studying every piece of information about Cathra 9. The planet had been a Kruinix training ground for over 200 years. Thousands of warriors had been tested there. Many had died. The records showed causes of death: predator attacks, exposure, falls, starvation, poisoning. Hana memorized maps. She learned about the ecology. She studied which plants were edible and which were toxic. She read reports about the predators and their hunting patterns. She watched videos of Kruinix warriors attempting the trial. Noting their mistakes. In the station's gym, she trained in high gravity. Her body protested at first, every movement feeling heavy and wrong. But she pushed through the pain. She practiced moving efficiently, conserving energy, finding balance in the heavier pull. She also made a list of items to bring. The rules allowed her to carry whatever she could fit in one standard pack. Most Kruinix warriors filled their packs with weapons and armor. Hana made different choices. She requested specific tools from Earth. Simple things. Basic things. Things that Velmoth would probably laugh at. On the second day, Jiho brought her a message from Earth. Her sister Nari had sent a video. Hana watched it alone in her quarters. Nari stood in their childhood home, smiling but with tears in her eyes. "I know you're going to do something dangerous," Nari said in the video. "You always do. And I know I can't stop you. So instead I'll just say this. Remember when we were kids and we climbed that mountain? Everyone said we were too small, too young, too weak. But we made it to the top. Not because we were strong, but because we didn't give up. That's what being human means, big sister. We don't give up. Hannah watched the video 3 times. Then she recorded her own message, just in case. She kept it short and simple. She told Nari she loved her. She told her parents she was proud to be their daughter. She told Earth that she would do her best. On the morning of the 4th day, delegations from every council species gathered at the docking bay. They would watch via satellite feed as Hannah attempted the trial. The betting pools had already started. Most species gave her less than a day before she died. Velma stood near his ship, surrounded by other Crew X warriors. They watched Hannah approach with what looked like amusement. She wore simple clothing, not armor. Her pack looked light. She carried no visible weapons. The Arbiter appeared as a holographic projection. Commander Hannah Choi, do you wish to proceed with this trial? I do, Hannah said. The rules are simple. You will be dropped at the southern edge of the test zone. You must reach the extraction point 500 kilometers north. You have 7 standard days. If you succeed, your challenge is met. If you fail to reach the extraction point, or if your life signs terminate, the trial ends. Do you understand? I understand. Do you wish to make any statement before departure? Hannah looked around at the assembled aliens. She saw pity in some eyes, curiosity in others, contempt in still others. She saw our own team standing together, their faces showing fear for her but also pride. She walked to the center of the bay. She looked up at the cameras that would broadcast this moment across the galaxy. She thought about every human who would watch this, every person on Earth who believed in her, every child who dreamed of the stars. Then she looked directly at the camera feed going to Valmoth's viewing chamber. She raised her right hand. She extended only her middle finger, the ancient gesture of defiance that humans had used for thousands of years. The bay erupted in confusion. Some species didn't understand the gesture. Others had studied human culture enough to know what it meant. Valmoth's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of anger in his species. Hannah held the gesture for 3 full seconds. Then she lowered her hand, turned, and walked onto the transport ship without another word. Minho caught up with her at the ramp. Hannah, wait. He pressed something into her hand. A small patch with the Earth flag on it. Come back to us. She nodded once, then boarded the ship. The transport was piloted by a neutral species, the Daliori, who had no stake in the trial. The pilot said nothing as they left the station and flew toward Kethra 9. The planet grew larger in the viewport. It was beautiful in a deadly way, with red rocks and purple skies and storms that raged across its surface. The ship entered the atmosphere. Hannah felt the turbulence shake the hull. She checked her pack one final time. Everything was in place. Everything was ready. The ship landed in a flat area surrounded by jagged rocks. The rear door opened. Heat rushed in immediately. The air was thin but breathable, filled with strange scents that Hannah didn't recognize. She stepped out onto alien soil. The red dirt crunched under her boots. In the distance, she could see mountains rising toward the purple sky. Between here and there lay 500 kilometers of the most dangerous terrain the Kruinix could create. The ship lifted off behind her. Leaving her alone, Hannah stood still for a moment, letting her senses adjust. The heat was intense. The gravity made her feel heavy. The air made her slightly dizzy. She could hear strange sounds in the distance, animal calls that her brain couldn't quite process. She looked up at the sky where she knew the satellites watched. She imagined Velmuth in his viewing chamber, waiting for her to panic, to run, to make mistakes. Instead, she smiled. Then she adjusted her pack, oriented herself north, and started walking. She had 7 days to prove that humanity belonged among the stars, and she was going to do it step by step. The first thing Hannah did was stop and observe. This confused the watchers. Most Kruonix warriors started moving immediately, trying to cover as much distance as possible while they were fresh. But Hannah stood still for 10 full minutes, just looking and listening and smelling. She noticed how the wind moved through the rocks. She noticed the patterns in the dirt that showed where water had flowed during the last rain. She noticed small plants growing in the shadows of larger rocks. She noticed tracks from animals, some fresh, some old. Then she started walking. Not fast, not slow. A steady pace that she could maintain for hours. Every few minutes, she stopped to make marks on her datapad, noting landmarks and directions. Back on Apex 7, the human team watched the feed in their quarters. John Ho Lee, the communications officer, sat at the console with his hands tight on the armrests. She's moving too slow. At this rate, it will take her 10 days to reach the extraction point. But Yuna shook her head. No, look closer. She's not trying to go fast. She's learning. Every plant she passes, she's categorizing. Every rock formation, she's memorizing. She's turning this death world into a map inside her head. Will that be enough? Minho asked quietly. I don't know, Yuna admitted. But it's the most human thing she could do. We don't have instincts for alien worlds. So we observe. We learn. We adapt. On Kethra 9, Hannah found her first water source 2 hours into the walk. It was a small pool fed by a spring, tucked between red rocks. Most Kruonix warriors missed these pools because they could go days without water. But humans needed water constantly. She tested the water with her chemical scanner. It showed traces of minerals, but nothing toxic to human biology. She filled her bottles and drank deeply, feeling the liquid ease her dry throat. Then she marked the location on her map. By late afternoon, the heat had become almost unbearable. Hannah's shirt was soaked with sweat. Her skin burned despite the protective cream she had applied. This was when most warriors pushed through, trying to show their toughness. Hannah did something different. She found a shaded overhang and stopped. She ate some of her rations and rested. She wasn't trying to prove she was tough. She was trying to survive. As she rested, she watched the local wildlife. Small lizard-like creatures scurried between rocks. Insect equivalents buzzed in the air. She noticed a bird-like animal landing near the water pool. She watched how it approached carefully, checking for predators before drinking. Smart animals survived by being cautious. Hannah decided to follow their example. As the sun set, the temperature dropped fast. Within an hour, it went from 45 degrees to near freezing. Hannah found a small cave, checked it for dangerous animals, and set up a simple shelter using her thermal blanket. She ate more rations and reviewed her recordings of the day. She had traveled 35 kilometers. Not impressive by Kruonix standards. But she had learned valuable information about the environment. And she had conserved her energy. The second day brought her first real challenge. She was walking through a rocky area when she sensed something watching her. The feeling made the hair on her arms stand up. It was an ancient human instinct, one that had kept her ancestors alive when they were prey animals themselves. She stopped walking but didn't run. Running triggered chase instincts in predators. Instead, she slowly turned her head, scanning the rocks. There, on a ledge above her, a creature the records called a Kreshtar. It was massive, about 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful legs and claws as long as her forearm. Its hide was armored with thick scales. Its eyes were fixed on her with predatory intelligence. The Kreshtar had killed 17 Kruonix warriors over the years. It was an ambush hunter, incredibly strong and fast over short distances. Hana's heart pounded in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she forced herself to stay calm. She watched the creature, studying it. The Kreshtar was evaluating her, deciding if she was worth the energy to hunt. She made herself bigger, raising her arms. She made noise, a deep shout that echoed off the rocks. The Kreshtar's head tilted, confused by this strange behavior. Then Hana did something that confused the watchers back on the station. She backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact with the predator. She moved toward a narrow passage between rocks, a space too small for the large creature to follow easily. The Kreshtar watched her go. Then it settled back down on its ledge. Hana had made herself seem difficult. Not worth the effort. The predator decided to wait for easier prey, but Hana wasn't done. She had learned something important. She had learned how the Kreshtar hunted, how it evaluated prey, where it liked to wait. And she had a plan. She spent the next 3 hours preparing. She found a place where 3 large rocks leaned against each other, creating an unstable formation. She found long branches from dead plants and used them as levers. She created a trap, one that would bring tons of rock crashing down when triggered. Then she laid a trail. She took some of her food and spread it in a line, leading to the trigger point. She added her own scent by leaving pieces of cloth torn from her shirt. Finally, she climbed to a safe position and waited. The Kreshtar came at dusk. It had been following her scent for hours, curious about the strange prey that hadn't run. It found the food trail and followed it, its massive body moving with surprising silence. It stepped onto the trigger point. The branches snapped. The rock shifted. 3 tons of stone fell directly onto the creature. The Kreshtar died instantly. In the viewing chamber on Apex 7, Velmoth stood up from his seat. His mandibles clicked rapidly. How did she, the human, use a trap? The Vexori representative, who had been watching with great interest, spoke up. Humans have used traps for over 40,000 years. It's one of their primary hunting methods. Why spend energy chasing prey when you can make prey come to you? Velma stared at the screen, where Hana was carefully approaching the dead Kreshtar. But she had no weapons. She had no time to prepare. He stopped, realization dawning. She turned the environment into a weapon. Yes, the Vexori said. That is what humans do. They adapt everything around them into tools. Rocks become hammers. Sticks become spears. Gravity becomes a trap. The entire world becomes their arsenal. On Kethra 9, Hana harvested what she could from the Kreshtar. The claws could be used as cutting tools. The hide could provide protection. The meat was edible according to her scanner. She worked efficiently, her hands steady despite the adrenaline still flowing through her system. She had been on the planet for 2 days. She had traveled 60 kilometers. And she had killed a predator that had ended the lives of multiple trained warriors. But more importantly, she had proven something. Not to the Council, not to Velmoth, but to herself. Humans didn't need to be the strongest. They didn't need to be the fastest. They didn't need natural weapons. Because humans had something better. They had curiosity. They had creativity. They had the ability to look at a pile of rocks and see a weapon. To look at a dangerous predator and see dinner. That night, as she sat by a small fire cooking Kreshtar meat, Hana allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She was tired. Her muscles ached from the heavy gravity. Her skin was burned and scratched. But she was alive. She was learning. She was adapting. And somewhere in orbit, the galaxy was watching a human woman turn a death world into her own personal classroom. The 3rd day brought new challenges. The terrain changed from rocky desert to what the records called the Broken Canyons. This was where most Kruonix warriors failed. The narrow passages amplified sound, making stealth impossible. The temperature swings were even more extreme, and the apex predator of Catherine made its home here, the Venthrak. A serpentine hunter 15 meters long, with thermal sensing and armor that could deflect most weapons. 3 Venthrak had killed over 100. Warriors between them. Hannah stood at the entrance to the canyon and studied the terrain. Then she made a decision that surprised everyone watching. She built a fire. "She's mad," Velmoth said in his chamber. "Fire will attract every predator in the canyon." But Junho, watching from the human quarters, suddenly understood. No, she's not trying to hide. She's doing something else. "Yuna, what resources does fire give you?" Yuna's eyes widened. "Heat, light, and she can work with materials. She can shape things." On the planet, Hana fed the fire with dried wood she had collected. She placed rocks in the flames, heating them until they glowed. She took resin from a local plant, a sticky substance that hardened when it cooled. And then she started making things. Real things. Tools that would help her survive. She worked through the night, and by morning, she was no longer just a human dropped on a death world. She was a human armed and ready. The morning light revealed what Hana had created during the night. She had crafted a spear, its wooden shaft fire-hardened to make it strong, its tip sharpened to a deadly point. She had made a bow using flexible wood and cord woven from plant fibers. She had fashioned arrows, crude but functional. She had created knives from stones she had carefully chipped and shaped. Back on the station, Sora Jang, the human anthropologist, began broadcasting information to any council species willing to listen. She showed images from Earth's history. Ancient humans with simple stone tools. Hunters carrying spears. Gatherers with woven baskets. "This is what Velmoth doesn't understand," Sora explained. "Humans don't need to be born with weapons. We make them. We've been making them for 2 million years. Every material we touch becomes a tool. Every challenge we face becomes a lesson. Our species survived ice ages, droughts, predators, and diseases not because we were strong, but because we could adapt faster than nature could kill us." On Catherine 9, Hannah entered the canyon with her new weapons. She moved carefully, watching for signs of the Venthrak. The predator hunted using heat sensing, which meant it could track her body warmth even in complete darkness. Most Kulanix warriors tried to fight the Venthrak head-on. They relied on their strength and their armor. But Hannah had studied the records. She knew that direct confrontation with a Venthrak usually ended badly. The creature was simply too large, too well-armored, too powerful. So she planned something different. She found a suitable location where the canyon narrowed. She set up a false camp, complete with a fire and her thermal blanket arranged to look like a sleeping person. Then she climbed to a ledge above, her bow ready, and waited. The wait lasted hours. The sun moved across the purple sky. The temperature rose and fell. Hannah's muscles cramped from staying still, but she didn't move. This was another human skill. Patience. The ability to wait for exactly the right moment. As the sun began to set, she heard it. A sound like scales sliding over rock. The Venthrak was coming. The creature was even more massive than she had imagined. Its body was as thick as a tree trunk, covered in overlapping scales that gleamed like metal. Its head was triangular, with heat-sensing pits along its jaw. Its mouth could open wide enough to swallow a Kruenix warrior whole. The Venthrak approached the false camp slowly. It sensed something wrong but couldn't identify the threat. Its head swayed back and forth, its heat sensors trying to locate prey. Hannah didn't try for a killing shot. That would be impossible. Instead, she aimed for a spot just behind the creature's head, where the scales were slightly smaller. She drew the bow, feeling the cord pull tight. She breathed out slowly, and she released. The arrow flew straight and buried itself in the Venthrak's flesh. Not deep, not fatal, but enough to hurt. The creature screamed, a sound that made Hannah's ears ring. It thrashed violently, smashing the false camp to pieces. Then it began hunting for whatever had hurt it, but Hannah was already moving. She climbed down from her ledge and ran through the canyon, following a route she had planned. The Venthrak followed, angry and bleeding. This was Hannah's real plan. Not to kill the predator in one strike, but to wound it and make it chase her. To keep it moving, to never let it rest, to slowly bleed it out. The council members watching from the station realized what they were seeing. The HFY representative explained it to those who didn't understand. Persistence hunting, they said. One of humanity's oldest hunting methods. They wound prey and follow it for hours or even days, never letting it recover. The prey is faster and stronger, but humans can keep going. They don't stop. Eventually, the prey dies from exhaustion and blood loss. Velmoth watched the screen with a mix of horror and fascination. This is how humans hunted on their world. This is how humans hunted everything on their world, the HFY replied. They hunted animals 10 times their size, using nothing but persistence and patience. They weren't the strongest predator on Earth. They were the most terrifying. For 14 hours, Hannah led the Venthrak on a chase through the canyon. She stayed just ahead of it, occasionally stopping to fire another arrow, keeping the wound open, keeping the creature moving. She didn't try to outrun it. She just had to outlast it. The Venthrak had never encountered prey that hunted like this. It was confused and growing weak. Every time it tried to rest, Hannah appeared again, another arrow finding its flesh. Every time it tried to ambush her, she was already moving to a new position. Finally, as the sun rose on the 4th day, the Venthrak made a mistake. Exhausted and desperate, it charged directly at Hannah across open ground. She dodged to the side. The creature was too tired to correct its path. As it passed, Hannah drove her spear with all her strength into the creature's eye. The Venthrak collapsed. Its massive body crashed into the canyon wall and lay still. Hannah stood over the creature, breathing hard, her entire body shaking from exhaustion. She had been moving for 14 straight hours. She had killed a predator that had ended over 30 Kruenix warriors. And she had done it with tools she made from rocks and sticks. She didn't celebrate. She didn't have the energy. She simply harvested what she could from the body and found a safe place to rest. She slept for 12 hours, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion. When she woke on the 5th day, she had traveled over 300 kilometers. The extraction point was within reach. She could make it easily with 2 days remaining. But then she heard something that changed everything. A voice, weak, speaking in a language her translator recognized as Kruenix. Calling for help. Hannah followed the sound. She found him in a collapsed part of the canyon. A young Kruenix warrior, his armor dented and broken, his leg twisted at an angle that looked wrong even for his species. He had been there for days, maybe weeks. His name was Tolvin. He had been part of a training group. He had fallen during the trial and been left for dead. His supplies were gone. He was starving and dehydrated. When he saw Hannah, he tried to reach for a weapon, but he was too weak. "Stay back, human," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Hannah could have left him. The trial was hers alone. She had no obligation to help. In fact, helping him might slow her down, might even cause her to fail. But she didn't even hesitate. She approached slowly, her hands visible and empty. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "I'm going to help." "Why?" Tolvin asked, confusion in his 6 eyes. "My people insulted yours. Velmoth called you weak." Hannah knelt beside him and began examining his injuries. "You're hurt. I can help. That's all that matters." She had brought medical supplies, but they were designed for humans, not Kruinics. She had to improvise. She used her scanner to identify which of the local plants had pain-killing properties. She created a splint for his leg using materials from her pack. She shared her water and food. "This doesn't make sense," Tolvin said as she worked. "You could leave me and save your strength. Why waste resources on me?" Hana looked at him. "Because you're a person who needs help. That's what humans do. We help. Even when it's not convenient. Even when it doesn't benefit us. We help because it's the right thing to do." She spent the rest of the day caring for Tolvin. She made a stretcher and helped him move to a safer location. She set up camp and made food. She treated his wounds and kept him hydrated. That night, as they sat by the fire, Tolvin spoke quietly. "I thought humans were weak. That's what we're taught. That physical strength is what matters most. Strength is useful," Hana said, "but it's not everything. Humans survived on Earth not because we were strong. We survived because we could cooperate. Because we could imagine better tools. Because we could see someone suffering and decide to help, even when it cost us something." "Your species is strange," Tolvin said. "Yes," Hana agreed. "But strange doesn't mean weak." The next morning, Hana helped Tolvin to his feet. He was heavy, over twice her weight, and his injured leg made it difficult for him to walk. But Hana didn't complain. She supported him, adjusting her pace to match his limited mobility. They moved slowly through the canyon, taking frequent breaks. Hana's own exhaustion was catching up with her. Her muscles screamed in protest. The heavy gravity made every step feel like climbing a mountain, but she kept going. Step by step, one foot in front of the other, supporting a warrior from the species that had called her weak. On the station, the gallery was packed with species watching the feed. Even Velma stood silently, staring at the screen. "She's going to fail," someone said. "She's wasted too much time helping him. She won't reach the extraction point." But others weren't so sure. They had watched Hana survive for 6 days. They had seen her adapt. They had seen her hunt. They had seen her show mercy. On the evening of the 7th day, just as the time limit was about to expire, 2 figures emerged from the canyon and limped toward the extraction point. Hana Choi arrived supporting Tolvin, both of them exhausted, both of them alive. The extraction point was crowded when Hana arrived. What should have been a simple pickup had turned into the most watched event in galactic history. Ships from every council species orbited overhead. Representatives had gathered on the ground, wanting to witness the moment in person. Hana helped Tolvin to the medical station. The young warrior was barely conscious, his strength finally giving out. Kruinics medical personnel rushed forward with equipment. They looked at Hana with expressions she couldn't read, then focused on treating their injured warrior. Minho was the first to reach Hana. He grabbed her shoulders, checking her for injuries. "You're alive. You actually did it. We need to get her to medical," Taiyang said, scanning her with a portable device. "She's dehydrated, exhausted, probably has heat damage, muscle strain." "I'm fine," Hana said, though her legs were shaking and her voice was rough from 7 days of thin air. "I completed the trial. I'm here." The crowd parted as a massive figure approached. Velmoth walked slowly across the landing zone, his 4 legs moving in perfect rhythm. His 6 eyes were fixed on Hana. Behind him came other Kruinics warriors, all watching silently. Velmoth stopped a few meters away. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet landing zone. "I have been warcast for 40 cycles. I have trained on Kethranine 6 times. I lost half my cohort on my first trial. I have seen hundreds of warriors attempt this test. Many failed. Many died." He paused. "You, human, made our death world look like a garden. A ripple went through the crowd. Hannah stood as straight as her exhausted body would allow, meeting Velmoth's gaze. You killed a Kreshtar with a trap, Velmoth continued. You hunted a Venthrak for 14 hours and killed it with primitive weapons. You crossed terrain that kills trained warriors. And then, when you could have ensured your own success, you stopped to save one of us. One of the species that insulted you. The Arbiter's holographic form appeared above them. Warcast Velmoth, do you withdraw your objection to humanity's admission to the Council? Velmoth's mandibles clicked slowly. I do more than withdraw my objection. I was wrong. Profoundly wrong. He looked at the assembled species. I called humans weak because they lack natural weapons. But I see now that I misunderstood what makes a species strong. He turned back to Hannah. Humans are not weak because they lack claws. They are terrifying because they don't need them. They look at any environment and turn it into a weapon. They look at any challenge and invent a solution. They can outlast predators, outwit prey, and adapt faster than evolution itself. Velmoth gestured to the medical station where Tolvan was being treated. And more than that, they show mercy when they have no obligation to. They help when it costs them. My species uses Kethranine to test strength. This human showed us that survival is about more than physical power. It's about intelligence, creativity, compassion. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the Vajori representative began making a sound, a kind of humming that was their version of applause. Other species joined in, each with their own way of showing approval. The Arbiter's voice rang out. The Galactic Council will now vote on the admission of humanity as a member species. The vote took less than 5 minutes. Every species voted yes. Even those who had been doubtful before. Even those who had agreed with Velmoth initially. They had all watched Hannah survive. They had all seen what humans could do. But the Arbiter had more to say. The Council has also decided, by unanimous vote, to offer humanity a seat as a full member, with Commander Hannah Choi as the first human counselor. Hannah swayed slightly. Jiho caught her arm to steady her. Hannah, they're offering you a council seat. That's unprecedented for a new species. I need to sit down, Hannah said quietly. They brought a chair. Hannah sat, grateful to finally rest. Around her, the representatives began to disperse, talking excitedly among themselves. She could hear them discussing what they had witnessed, how it would change their understanding of what made a species worthy. Tolvan approached later, leaning on a support frame. His leg was treated and splinted properly now. He looked at Hannah with something like awe. Why did you help me? He asked. Your trial. Your species' future. You risked it all for someone from the people who insulted you. Hannah looked up at him. Because you were hurt and I can help. It's that simple. But what if you had failed? What if helping me meant humanity was rejected? Then we would have been rejected, Hannah said. But I would rather fail while being human than succeed by abandoning someone who needed help. That's who we are. That's what makes us human. Tolvan bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. I will tell my people this story. I will tell them what it truly means to be strong. Weeks later, Hannah stood in the council chamber again. This time, she wore not a military uniform but the robes of a council member. Her team sat in the gallery, watching with pride. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats, all waiting to hear what the human counselor would say. The Arbiter invited her to speak. Hannah walked to the center platform, the same place where she had accepted Velmoth's challenge. But this time, she stood there as an equal, as a voice for her entire species. I want to thank the Council for accepting humanity, she began. But I also want to talk about what happened on Kethra 9. Many of you watched me survive that world. You saw me hunt predators and make tools. But I want to make sure you understand what you really saw." She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. "You didn't see a human being strong. You saw a human being human. Everything I did on that planet, humans have been doing for millions of years. We trapped animals because we couldn't outrun them. We made tools because we weren't born with claws. We adapted to new environments because our original home kept changing. We helped others because that's how our species survived, by working together." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of different species. "Velmoth called us weak, and by his definition, we are. We don't have armor. We don't have natural weapons. We're not particularly strong or fast. But weakness and strength are about more than physical power. Humans are strong because we adapt. We're strong because we cooperate. We're strong because we can imagine things that don't exist and then create them." She pulled something from her pocket. The data storage device she had carried through the entire trial. "On Kethra 9, I learned everything I could about that world. I mapped it. I studied its plants and animals. I figured out how to survive there safely. And I'm giving all of that information to the Kruonix." A murmur went through the chamber. Velmoth stood up in surprise. Hannah continued. "The Kruonix use that world to test strength. But now they can also use it to teach survival. They can learn the safe routes, the edible plants, the best water sources. Future warriors won't have to die to prove themselves. They can learn to survive and come home to their families." She looked at Velmoth. "That's the difference between our species. You saw Kethra 9 as an arena. We see it as a classroom. You use it to test who is strongest. We would use it to teach everyone to survive." Velmoth approached the platform. For a moment, the two of them stood facing each other. The warrior who had insulted humanity. The human who had proven him wrong. Then Velmoth did something no one expected. He removed his Warcast medallion and placed it in Hannah's hand. "This medallion is given to warriors who prove themselves in combat," he said. "But you proved something more important. You proved that true strength is not about power. It's about wisdom. It's about mercy. It's about lifting others up instead of leaving them behind." He stepped back. "I am honored to call you a warrior, Hannah Choi. I am honored to call your species our allies." The chamber erupted in approval. Sounds and gestures of celebration from hundreds of species. Hannah looked at the medallion in her hand, then at the crowd, then at her team in the gallery. Later, back on Earth, Hyun-Woo Park interviewed Hannah for the global broadcast. Billions of humans watched as he asked her about the trial. "Everyone wants to know," Hyun-Woo said, "about that moment at the beginning. Everyone wants the beginning. When you gave Velmoth the middle finger, what were you thinking?" Hannah smiled, the first genuine smile many had seen from her in weeks. "I was thinking that he had just insulted all of humanity. 7 billion people. All of our history, all of our achievements, dismissed because we don't have claws. Someone needed to respond. And the middle finger was your response?" "It was the most human response I could think of," Hannah said. "For thousands of years, that gesture has meant one thing: defiance. It means I don't accept your judgment. I don't bow to your insults. I am here, and I matter. I wanted Velmoth to know that humans don't break when insulted. We stand up. We prove ourselves. We show the universe what we're really made of." "But you also said there was a tactical reason?" Hannah nodded. "I needed them to underestimate me. If they thought I was just angry and rude, they wouldn't see the planning. They wouldn't expect me to adapt and survive. The middle finger made them think I was letting emotions control me. But actually, I was completely in control." "So you used a rude gesture to gain an advantage?" "I used a very human gesture to remind everyone what humans are," Hannah corrected. "We feel things deeply. We get angry when insulted. We love fiercely. We fear honestly. But we also use those emotions